Thank you very much, and thank you to Red Cloud for hosting us today. I remember 8-9 years ago, one of the first events in the Red Cloud office with about eight or nine companies. Red Cloud has come a long ways. Very well run conference, so thank you very much. So Adventus is about 2.5-year-old company. We IPO'd in February of 2017 as Adventus Zinc Corporation. Many of you might have remembered that. We had a license to hunt in the world to build a business, a base metals business somewhere. We looked at 240 projects around the world, 25 countries, and we decided to build a copper gold business in Ecuador. Directors fell off their chairs when they heard that, but we quickly convinced them on why Ecuador is the place to be. We believe Ecuador is the #1 spot in the world for making new copper discoveries. It's ourselves and SolGold as public junior companies looking for copper there. I think one thing to differentiate both companies is we're looking at a large portfolio of projects in an emerging country that has been unexplored. It differentiates both companies from all the other base metal developers that are really focused on their own project. We have 3 projects right now, not the 75 that SolGold have, but we'll be drilling all 3 this year for new discoveries. And geology in Ecuador we feel is most exciting in the world. We've gone about building the company a little bit different than all of our peers in Ecuador, and that is we're maximizing our Ecuadorian content. So all of our employees in Ecuador are Ecuadorian, and we're building our shareholder register now with as much Ecuadorians as possible. So we let Ecuadorians be empowered and to help us build a business, and we are the partners globally bringing in the capital for the business. So these are the building blocks of Adventus. Number 1, we do have a high-grade resource. It's very similar to the Golden Grove deposit in Australia, owned by EMR, or the Santiago Project VMS, also in Australia. So these are about 10 million ton VMSs at 5+% copper equivalent. Ours is at surface. So we have that resource and the project at the feasibility stage to backstop the value of the company. In Australia, Santiago Resources earlier this year had $1 billion market cap on that size of resource, but in production. I'll talk about the economics a little bit later. We have a very unique shareholder base. I think there's no other company in the world in the junior space that has our type of shareholder base. And it's really a club deal to play the future of Ecuador. When I say future, next 2 to 5 years, we think the country is going to open up for new investment. This year, 2 major mines are going into production, the first 2 major mines ever. And we think our high-grade VMS is going to be the 3rd major mine built in the country. So I'll take you through the 5 strategic investors. In the last year, we picked up, we've gone from 5 institutional investors to 24 and growing. And we have raised $26 million in the last few months to really push our exploration development in country. We are using a seasoned Ecuadorian team to help us find additional projects in country. We have 2 copper porphyry districts. We flew those districts with $3 million US of airborne earlier this year, and we have 20 copper porphyry targets that have come out of that. We haven't really talked about that publicly as we're in the process of adding additional land around those projects, but we expect to start drilling the first target in November. And what we're looking at here are billion-ton type targets. On all 3 of our projects in Ecuador, we have a local partner. It is a public listed company, but it's run by Ecuadorians. It's called Salazar Resources. If you go back 30 years, 3 companies were exploring in Ecuador. Salazar Resources with Newmont, Cornerstone, and Illumina Group. And we've tied ourselves up with Salazar going forward. So all 3 of these projects were developed by Salazar. Curipamba is our VMS district, where we have the high-grade resource with a PEA and now entering feasibility study. We just flew for the first time an airborne survey throughout the entire district, and we'll be targeting new discoveries starting in October. And the Alliance, that's an 80-20 deal with our partners. As mentioned, we'll be drilling our first porphyry target in November of this year. 100 million shares out. Last I looked, we were $1.06 a share, so we're just over 100 million market cap. We have 23 million in cash. that funds us to drill all 3 of our projects over the next 12 months and advance the feasibility study activities on our VMS. And we're at or near all-time high, as you can see with the chart here. Research is coming from several groups. Recently, Laurentian Bank, Raymond James raised their target price today to $1.90 a share. So this is the shareholder base I was talking to you about. Collectively, this group is backing us for about $300 million of follow-on investment. As mentioned, this is a club deal for playing the geological potential of Ecuador. Our shareholders have a 2 to 5 year outlook. We're looking for a 2 to 3 times plus return. So if that fits your investment criteria, then we might be a good fit for you. We've got 2 private equity groups, Resource Capital Funds and Greenstone, 2 royalty and streaming companies in Wheaton and Altius, and the most significant addition was the Novus Group earlier this year, which I'll talk about shortly. So, who's Novus? So Novus invested $6 million US to start in May of this year. They're the largest industrial group in Ecuador. They're a household name. They started around 80 years ago. The old man went from a peasant to a Forbes 10 by building the largest banana export business in the world. They co-own the only deep water port in Ecuador. They're the largest commercial real estate owner. They own a sugarcane refinery, etc. They've been looking for the last 5 years for investment in the mining sector. They picked us. They spent 8 months doing due diligence. They'd like to invest $100 million in us in due course. Some of the advantages of the investment have been they've got a foundation like the Lundin Foundation, which is augmenting our social programs on each of our projects. They're creating a fund for Ecuadorians to invest in with the sole purpose to invest in Adventus. And they've had the most success getting water permits, which is the key thing in Ecuador for both drilling and production. The gentleman on top left is their CEO. He's joined our board. He's learning about mining through us. And it's the first time ever that major Ecuadorian money has invested in the Ecuadorian mining sector. So when you think about the platform that we've created, we've got the Salazars on the ground. They've helped build a team for us, all Ecuadorian team. They're the eyes and ears for additional projects. Novus are the deep pockets and influence in country, and Adventus is the public company with the driving strategy and bringing in international investment. So that's a unique platform. We think one that is set up best for success in the long term in the country. 8 board members, 4 independent, 4 non-independent. We've got representatives from Altius Minerals, Greenstone, and Novus. And our management team all come from major mining organizations. I've come to an entrepreneurial firm trying to build something new in the market. This is where our 3 projects are located. We have a major operating next to all 3, not by design. Curipamba, we have Anglo-American and Luminex surrounding us looking for porphyries. Pahili, which is one of our porphyry districts, we surround in the south. Southern Copper is 1.5 billion ton porphyry. And at Santiago in March of this year, Newcrest announced a $100 million earn-in with Cornerstone. And we continue to have prospector teams working through the country looking for 4th, 5th, 6th projects. As mentioned, this year Ecuador is becoming a mining country with the Mirador open pit copper mine starting production in July, and the Fruto del Norte gold mine owned by Lundin Gold expected to start official production in the 4th quarter of this year. This is our resource within the VMS district. You're looking at 10 to 11 million tons at over 5% copper equivalent. This is right at surface. The majority of the resource is 40 to 80 meters from surface, low elevation, near the deep water port that Novus owns. 2% copper, 3.2 grams gold, 3.2% zinc, 2 ounces gold. That's around $400 rock. And the direct mine cost, so mining, processing, and G&A is $50. So this is a high margin project that will drive cash flow. We're talking about $100 million per annum of free cash flow in the first few years, and could be the starter kit of creating a very significant company. The deal with the Salazars is we have to spend $25 million in the ground over 5 years to earn a 75% interest. We're just about 2 years in, have spent $14.5 million, so we'll easily get there over the next couple of years. And we spent this year in particular focusing on metallurgy to lock cycle tests throughout the deposit, and we have very clean copper and zinc concentrates, no deleterious elements, and we own, as Adventus, 100% of the offtake. The district, 22,000 hectares. We've flown that with airborne for the first time this summer. Look for drilling to be testing the best targets out of that airborne shortly. 65,000 meters drilled historically, 61,000 meters on our VMS. So the district is really virgin territory, and this was only discovered in the last 10 years. What we know to date is everything is high grade with a high gold tenure, and we see lots of conductors out of the airborne survey. These are some of the results we were putting out last year. They compete with Arrow Copper and Ivanhoe for the highest copper equivalent results in the world. Our best one was 24 meters at 11.5% copper equivalent. That would be around 40 meters below surface. And these are the results of the PEA that came out early summer, close to 300 million NPV after tax, 8% discount rate, less than 2-year payback. Since then, the VAT for capital costs in Ecuador has been removed, so you're looking at $165 million capex. And a major engineering firm is talking about a fixed turnkey contract at $110 million, which would make it about a 1-year payback. About 20,000 tons per annum of copper equivalent production per year for 15 years. That equates to 100,000 ounces of gold equivalent production. You can look at the revenue mix. I was speaking yesterday at Wheaton's Investor Day. You can see Wheaton is a major shareholder of this company. One of the things that they see is we produce 35 to 40,000 ounces of gold byproduct credit a year for about 12,000 ounces a year stream for the 15-year mine life. That will bring in $165 million, 100% of our capital costs. It add on a working cap facility potentially to that, and we still be the lowest quartile cash cost in the business. There's no other mining project globally that we know that has that possibility. So what are we doing next? We're doing the long lead items for production. That is the baseline studies right now. We'll be starting a feasibility study next year. We have a plan to be in production by 2023 unless someone buys us. This project fits with Australian mid-tiers very well. I mentioned Santiago Resources, I mentioned Golden Grove. I'm headed to Australia on Monday. And this project, of course, fits with this current cycle wherever we are in the cycle, but the current cycle of copper projects below. So we want to build a portfolio to spread risk over multiple projects, but more importantly, provide shareholders with that hockey stick potential return. How do you do that? Well, we're looking at big systems, so big porphyry systems. That's what we have at Pahili and Santiago. These are two projects that we own 80-20 with the Salazars. We have 20 copper porphyry targets. We've been grooming the best targets all summer. Some of our peers put out very flashy trenching results, grab samples, etc. We could have done that, but we're just finalizing some additional land acquisition, and that news flow should be steady on these projects coming in November. Just to excite your imagination, this project up here is the Santiago Project. Newmont put a few holes in the 90s. They were drilling 325 meters of 0.4-0.5% copper equivalent from surface, with the bottom of the holes entering the porphyry and the grade kicking up 0.6 to 0.8%. Newmont left in the 90s. We flew airborne over this, 4 kilometer by 2 kilometer airborne. You could fit billions of tons in that airborne anomaly. It looks like what Newmont drilled was just a leach cap on top of the supergene zone. So of course, an easy step there would be just to look at the drill hole logs and drill a hole much deeper from where Newmont was drilling 20 years ago. But there's lots of other targets there. We've got 10 kilometers of epithermal gold-silver veins at surface, as well as a buried skarn system. And on the left side of the screen, this is our best target at Pahili. This is 5 kilometers south of Southern Copper's 1.5 billion ton porphyry. We have a very large alteration zone, beautiful potassic alteration. We're trenching great numbers in the lithocap. We got outcropping bornite, all the pieces to be a very nice system, and that's where we'll be starting drilling in November. So to conclude, we are a platform for Ecuador. We're going about it differently than our peers. 3 projects so far. Look to see us adding additional projects in due course. Curipamba, we do have a resource that should be a copper mine over the next few years that backstops the value of the company. But we have very good exploration upside there, plus the 2 copper porphyries that will be drilling for new discoveries shortly. So 3 projects being drilled for new discoveries, fully funded with the feasibility study in the background. And I'll stop it there.
We do have time for a question or two for Chris, if anyone has a question.
Can you speak to the social situation in Supreme Court's recent judgment? How does that affect you going forward?
Yes. So there have been a few referendum questions this year in Ecuador. It seems to be a focus of attention for a lot of investors. The first few judgments by the Constitutional Court, and these questions, if you're not aware, are to try to ban mining in a certain jurisdiction, either a province or a canton of Ecuador. The first few judgments were squashed because of form. Last week, there were two Constitutional Court judgments that were squashed both for form, and the court went further to say that under the current environmental law in Ecuador, referendums banning mining in a certain jurisdiction are not congruent with the current Constitutional Court. So we've seen 4 different lawyers, legal firms opine on this judgment, and all 4 are basically saying the same thing. These referendums shouldn't be an issue going forward in Ecuador. From a social perspective, our partners started these projects with a strong social license to operate. If we had $1 million to spend, that's what we would spend on. Fortunately, have more than that, and so in all 3 projects, we have great support from our communities. Not all projects, unfortunately, in Ecuador have that social license, or they have operators that don't focus on that social license.
Thank you, Chris.